pricing, 99 cents, unless you're on the iPad, then it's $1.99. We won different awards. Corona gave us App of the Week, App of the Month. The board game itself has won several different awards from parent groups, mainly because it's a clean educational game. It is fun and addictive and a good learning game at the same time. So, not too many people share numbers. We just thought, let's share the actual numbers and give people a sense of at least what we've seen so far. This is actual gross revenue. When we launched, we had, through the press and our own gamers from our other games, we had some sales, and it's definitely dropped to very, very, very minimal sales right now. There's a lot of noise in the App Store. We're doing some things, and we haven't paid for any sort of marketing or advertising yet until we get the Facebook integration and until we have our player-to-player challenges in the game. We're not really trying to push any paid advertising. So this is what we think is our most important metric, and it's not exactly looking the way we'd like it to look, but how many people every day launch the game and play the game. So it's not great, but it's not horrible compared to some other indie games that we've seen. A lot of games lose their player base very, very quickly. So at least the game, people that do like it tend to stick with it for quite a while. So in the future, have we received notes? I'm not sure what's happening. Yeah, I can talk.
So one of the really great benefits of using Dabble was that it was easy to port it, like porting it to Android versus iOS, literally like file build for iOS, file build for Android. Depending on like the screen sizes and everything like that, you might optimize your code a little bit. But yeah, so the Barnes & Noble, the Nook tablet is a 1024 by 600 resolution. One of the things I think all of you who have already started doing development will appreciate is it's sort of it can, depending on how you design and plan your design from the get-go, something to think about is all the different screen sizes and form factors that people will be using with your application, whether you're doing it with Sencha Touch, whether you're doing it with an Adobe framework or Corona SDK. And so we basically went and Barnes & Noble has an approval process for getting into their store. And so we built a version specifically for that 1024 by 600 resolution. And we did get approved to launch in their store. However, we were contacted regarding possibility about launching with the Kindle Fire when it comes out on November 15th. So we are hoping, so we've held off on launching for the Nook because they would want an exclusive for like a 2-week period of time or something like that. So we have our fingers crossed, but this is all sort of still in the negotiation stage. So yeah.
So maybe we'll come back in 30 or 60 days and hopefully the numbers will be different. We'll give you more of a business view on the entire project. Like I said, we're working on challenges and Facebook integration that we think will hopefully help with the virality of the game. It doesn't really have anything like that to help people that like the game promote the game other than word of mouth. And we may play with paid advertising depending on how other aspects of the Kindle Fire launch progress.
One of the things that, this is a tech session, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about with tech is the challenges of deciding to go cross-platform. For us, the particular challenges we had with Corona were, you might get maybe 3/4 of the functionality that you could accomplish. And that 3/4 you'll be able to do with a lot less code. But for instance, you might not be, we can't do push notifications, for instance, on iOS right now. So let's say I want to build a game where I can challenge you to a game. Well, we're going to leverage email for those notifications instead of the nice little icon that you get. And I'd be curious to hear about with Sencha and with Adobe solutions whether they're able to support the iOS push notifications. I'm just not sure.
Do they have any kind of concept for native extensions?
Native extensions, no. I mean, you can leverage a lot of the native components, like you do native text fields and whatnot, but yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, what they've exposed for you, and you can leverage like web pop-ups and HTML5 kind of stuff if you want to extend that. And they do have a lot of the business components, like, you know, all of those Apple components that ship out of the box that are so nice and easy to use. They have replications of most of those, but because they have to be cross-platform compatible, when you touch and use them, they're good. They're just not quite as good. And that's why when we talk about, you know, do you want to use it for a business application? There are definitely cases where you can. There's a lot of good sample code out there for doing it. But you might want to look at all the possible solutions before you decide to do that. Okay. So we got 5 minutes left and thought we'd just go ahead and open the floor for questions.
So how hard was it to learn Lua?
It's a really, really loose language. Like, there's no typing. Everything's an object or a table. And honestly, right now, after we've built the app, there's still a couple things that I'm not totally, you know, comfortable with. But I would say, like, you can pick it up and start using it. Like, if you're used to using like JavaScript even, you can pick it up and start using it right away. It's just that when you start getting into like the nitty-gritty of, like, you know, when you're doing event handlers and closures and that sort of stuff, anytime that you're working with a sophisticated touch framework, you're gonna have to get comfy with that. So
If you're doing a small project like a game, then it's great, you know. But if you were to try to do some very, very large system and you had to build an entire framework, it might be more challenging to do that with a tool like Lua. It's ActionScript 2.0.
Backend architecture and analytics. What are you guys using for the backend and the analytics tools?
So we just use Flurry for analytics. Flurry, F-L-U-R-R-Y, Flurry.
I asked about exactly that. So is that what you use to create the charts that tracks how your users are, how many unique users you have per month?
Yeah, that's just Flurry analytics for that.
And an interesting thing about Flurry, so, you know, when you do it on iOS, you know, you download their SDK and plug it in, which is still, you know, not very difficult. But with Corona, it's as simple as require Flurry and then say flurry.init, and you give it your ID. And then anytime that it's, you know, they cut it down to like 1, 2, 3 lines of code. So it's really easy to leverage. They did the same thing with some bits of Facebook integration, some other libraries as well.
I would think that Facebook would be your largest demographic if you could port this as a Facebook app. I assume that you're just going to integrate Facebook for communication, using it as a medium for sharing?
No, we've actually already built a Flash version of the game, like the shell. We just haven't tied it yet into our essential, like our scoring system and everything like that. So we are going to build a Flash version and have the Flash version communicate. What we weren't sure of is whether we'll definitely be doing it inside of Facebook as well. And we were torn about whether to have the phone talk directly to the Facebook ecosystem or to just have Facebook be kind of its own separate entity, and then have the phone be its own entity as well.
One question about the overall developer experience when you're using Current. Like, is there an IDE or are you using kind of a text file? Or how does it work?
Sure. Basically, the simulator, I mean, there's a simulator, and then there's text files. That's about, I mean, yeah, I mean, like the text wrangler for Mac is what I use, and it's got nice syntax highlighting for Lua. So it's,
It has integration with Xcode.
oh yeah, you could write code, you could write in Xcode, and it'll do syntax highlighting for that as well, yeah. All right, cool. Thank you.